Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the thick glass window of the research vessel and watched the green jungle moon grow larger below them. 3 months ago, she had been working in a lab on Earth. Now she was floating in space with aliens, heading toward a planet that no human had ever visited before. The ship was called Harmony's Edge, and it belonged to the Galactic Council. Sarah was the first human to join their research team. Most days, she still could not believe it was real. "Dr. Chen, please report to the bridge," came a voice through the ship's speakers. The voice belonged to Captain Vextar, a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms and eyes that changed color when he was thinking hard. Sarah walked through the metal hallways of the ship. The walls hummed with a soft energy that kept them all alive in the cold of space. She passed the dining area where Click was eating something that looked like purple soup. Click looked like a giant insect with 6 legs and compound eyes that sparkled when the light hit them right. He was the ship's science officer and knew more about alien plants and animals than anyone else in the galaxy. When Sarah reached the bridge, Captain Vextar was standing in front of a large screen that showed the jungle moon below. His skin had turned a worried shade of dark blue. "We have a problem," he said without looking at her. "Illegal poachers have been spotted on Verdania 7. They are taking animals that should not be taken." Sarah looked at the screen. The jungle covered most of the moon's surface, with thick green trees that stretched up toward the sky like giant hands. Rivers of silver water cut through the green like scars. "What kind of animals are they taking?" Sarah asked. Click made a clicking sound with his mouth parts. "Dangerous ones. Very dangerous ones. Animals that could kill a whole city if they wanted to." Captain Vextar's eyes turned bright yellow, which meant he was worried. "We must go down and stop the poachers. But it is not safe. The animals on this moon are not like the gentle creatures on your Earth, Dr. Chen." Sarah felt excitement bubble up in her chest. She had joined this mission to study alien life forms. This was exactly what she had dreamed of doing. "I want to come with the away team," she said. The captain's 4 arms moved in different directions, a sign that he was thinking hard. "Are you sure? The creatures on this moon have killed many beings. They are not pets. They are predators." "I understand," Sarah said. "But I'm here to learn about alien animals. I cannot learn anything sitting on this ship." Clicketh clicked his mouth parts again. "Humans are strange. You want to meet dangerous animals instead of staying safe." 2 hours later, Sarah found herself standing on solid ground for the first time in weeks. The air was thick and warm, full of strange smells that made her nose tingle. Plants with purple leaves grew taller than Earth's redwood trees, and flowers the size of dinner plates glowed with soft light. The away team consisted of Sarah, Captain Vextar, Clicketh, and 2 security officers from different alien species. Everyone except Sarah carried weapons that hummed with energy. "Stay close," Captain Vextar warned. "The poachers left energy nets and traps everywhere, and the animals here are not afraid of anything." They walked through the jungle for an hour. Sarah kept stopping to look at amazing plants and insects, but the others pushed her to keep moving. The trees above them rustled with the movement of unseen creatures. Then they heard it, a sound like metal being torn apart, followed by a high-pitched crying noise that made Sarah's heart hurt. "This way," Click whispered, pointing toward a clearing ahead. They crept forward until they could see into the open space. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. In the middle of the clearing was the largest animal she had ever seen. It stood on 6 powerful legs, each one as thick as a tree trunk. Its body was covered in scales that looked like black glass, and patches of skin along its sides glowed with pulsing red light. The creature was nearly 8 feet tall, with a long neck and a head full of sharp teeth that sparkled like diamonds. But what made Sarah's heart break was the thick energy net wrapped around the creature's body. The net crackled with electricity, and where it touched the animal's skin there were burns and cuts. One of the creature's back legs was bent at a wrong angle, clearly broken. "It is a Nethrix," Click whispered. "Young one, but still very dangerous." The Nethrix tried to move, but the net held it tight. It made that terrible crying sound again, and the red lights on its sides pulsed faster. "We should call for backup," one of the security officers said, "and then we should put it out of its pain." "Agreed," Captain Vextar said. "These creatures have destroyed entire colonies, killed hundreds of beings. It is kinder to end its suffering now." Sarah stepped forward before anyone could stop her. "Wait. Dr. Chen, get back," the captain ordered. "That thing will kill you." But Sarah was looking into the Nethrix's eyes. They were large and dark like pools of deep water, and in those eyes she did not see anger or hunger. She saw fear and pain and something else that made her chest tight. "It is just scared," she said softly. The Nethrix turned its massive head toward her voice. For a moment, their eyes met across the clearing. The creature stopped struggling against the net. "Look at its body language," Sarah said, her voice getting stronger. "It is not trying to attack. It is trying to hide. This is not a predator. This is a frightened baby." Clicketh made angry clicking sounds. "Dr. Chen, you do not understand. Nethrix are killing machines. They have—" "I do not care what your databases say," Sarah interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. "I am looking at this animal right now, and I can see that it needs help." She took another step toward the Nethrix. Captain Vextar reached out with one of his arms to stop her, but Sarah was too quick. "Dr. Chen, stop," he called. But Sarah was already walking toward the trapped creature, her hands held out in front of her to show she meant no harm. The Nethrix watched her approach, its red patches flickering like a broken light. "It is okay," Sarah said in the same voice she used to calm scared animals on Earth. "I am not going to hurt you." The Nethrix made a soft sound, almost like a whimper. Its huge body trembled. Sarah reached the edge of the energy net. This close, she could see how badly the creature was hurt. Burns covered its beautiful scales, and green blood seeped from cuts where the net had bitten deep. "You poor thing," she whispered. Behind her, she could hear Captain Vexitar talking quickly into his communication device, probably calling for more security. Clickth was reading data from a scanner, his voice getting higher and more worried with each word. But Sarah only had eyes for the Nethrix. It was watching her with those deep, dark eyes, and she could swear she saw intelligence there. Not the simple intelligence of an animal, but something deeper, something that understood she was trying to help. "I am going to get you out of there," she promised. The Nethrix made another soft sound, and for just a moment, the red lights on its sides flickered to a gentle amber color. Sarah smiled. "See, you just needed someone to listen." Sarah knelt beside the energy net, her hands moving carefully over the crackling wires. The Nethrix watched her every movement, its breathing deep and painful. Each breath made the red patches on its sides glow brighter. "Dr. Chen, please step away from that creature," Captain Vextar called from behind her. His voice was tight with worry. "You do not know what it might do." "It is not going to do anything," Sarah said without looking back. "Can someone bring me the emergency medical kit?" "You cannot be serious," Clicketh said, his 6 legs clicking nervously on the ground. "That is a Nethrix. They are the most dangerous predators in this sector of the galaxy." Sarah found the control panel for the energy net. It was covered in symbols she did not recognize, but the basic design looked similar to electronic devices from Earth. She pressed what looked like a power button. Nothing happened. "The poachers probably locked it," one of the security officers said. "You need a special code to turn it off." Sarah looked at the Nethrix. The creature's eyes were getting dimmer and its breathing was becoming more shallow. Green blood was pooling under its body. "Then we cut it," she said. "With what?" Captain Vextar asked. "Those nets are made to hold creatures much stronger than any of us." Sarah pulled out her multi-tool. It had a small laser cutter that she used for taking plant samples. "This might work, that tiny tool." Click sounded shocked. "Against military-grade containment equipment?" "It is worth trying," Sarah said. She activated the laser and touched it to one of the net's wires. The wire sparked and began to melt. It was working, but very slowly. Behind her, she could hear the others talking in worried voices. Captain Vextar was reading something from his handheld computer. "According to the Galactic Council database," he said, "Nethrix have been responsible for the destruction of 12 colonies in the past 50 years. They attack without warning and show no mercy. The attack on mining station Zila 4, Click added, left 37 dead. The buildings were torn apart. The investigators said it looked like the Nethrix played with the structures before destroying them completely." Sarah kept cutting wires. Maybe there is more to those stories than what the reports say. "Dr. Chen," Captain Vextar's voice was getting more stern. "I am ordering you to step away from that creature. This is for your own safety. And I am telling you that this animal needs help," Sarah replied. She had cut through 5 wires now, and the net was starting to loosen. "Look at it. Really look at it. Does this seem like a monster to you?" The Nethrix made a soft sound and tried to shift its position. The movement made it cry out in pain, and the amber lights on its sides flickered back to red. "See?" Clicketh said. "It is getting angry. The red coloring means it is preparing to attack. Or it means it is in pain, Sarah said. She cut through another wire. On Earth, many animals change color when they are stressed or hurt. This is not Earth, Captain Vextar said. And this is not an Earth animal. Sarah ignored him and kept working. The laser was getting hot in her hand, but she did not stop. The Nethrix needed her to succeed. After 20 minutes, she had cut enough wires to create a gap in the net. The Nethrix sensed the change and tried to move toward the opening, but its broken leg would not support its weight. Easy, Sarah said softly. Let me help you. She crawled through the gap in the net and moved to the creature's injured leg. Up close, the Nethrix was even more magnificent. Its scales were not just black, but deep purple and blue and green like oil on water. The patches that glowed were beautiful, like living jewels. What are you doing? Captain Vextar asked. His voice sounded far away. I am going to splint this leg, Sarah said. She looked around the clearing and found some straight branches that had fallen from the trees. Someone bring me some medical tape from the kit. I am not helping you treat a Nethrix, Click said firmly. Then I will do it myself, Sarah replied. The Nethrix lay very still while Sarah worked on its leg. Sometimes it would make soft sounds, but it never tried to bite her or push her away. When she accidentally pressed too hard on a tender spot, it would whimper, and she would whisper apologies. I am sorry, she said as she wrapped the makeshift splint. I know it hurts, but this will help it heal properly. The creature's eyes followed her movements. Sarah was amazed by how expressive they were. She could see intelligence there and curiosity, and something that looked almost like gratitude. When she finished with the leg, Sarah moved to examine the burns and cuts from the energy net. They were deep and looked infected. I need antiseptic, she called to the others. And bandages. Lots of bandages. Dr. Chen, Captain Vextar said. We do not have medical supplies for creatures this large. Our kit is designed for beings our size. Then we improvise, Sarah said. She had torn strips from her own shirt and was using them to clean the worst wounds. The Nethrix held perfectly still, even though the cleaning must have been painful. You are wasting our medical supplies on a predator, Click said. What if one of us gets hurt? What if it attacks us after you heal it? It is not going to attack anyone, Sarah said. She was applying antiseptic to a deep cut on the creature's side. Look how gentle it is being. If it wanted to hurt us, it could have done it already. The Nethrix was indeed being remarkably gentle. Despite its huge size and obvious strength, it moved carefully around Sarah, as if it understood that she was much smaller and more fragile than it was. This is not natural behavior for a Nethrix, Captain Vextar said. He was reading from his computer again. They are supposed to be aggressive and territorial. Maybe your information is wrong, Sarah suggested. Maybe nobody has ever tried to help one before. She finished bandaging the worst wounds and sat back on her heels. The Nethrix looked much better already. The red patches on its sides had faded to a soft amber color and its breathing was easier. There, Sarah said with satisfaction. That should do for now. The Nethrix made a sound that was different from its earlier cries of pain. This sound was deeper, warmer. It reminded Sarah of the purring sound that cats made when they were happy. Is it purring? One of the security officers asked in amazement. I think it is, Sarah said. She reached out slowly and touched the Nethrix's neck. The scales were warm and smooth under her hand. You are welcome, she said softly. The creature leaned into her touch just like a pet dog might do. Captain Vextar stared at them with all four of his eyes wide. This is impossible. Nethrix do not bond with other species. They barely tolerate their own kind. Well, Sarah said, scratching gently behind what looked like the creature's ears. Maybe they just needed someone to give them a chance. The Nethrix closed its eyes and made that purring sound again. Louder this time. Click dropped his scanner. By the 7 moons, he whispered. What have you done? Back on the ship, Sarah had turned cargo hold 3 into a makeshift medical bay. The Nethrix, which she had started calling Onyx because of its beautiful dark scales, lay on a bed of soft materials she had gathered from around the ship. The creature was much larger now that it was no longer trapped in the net. Even lying down, its head was level with Sarah's chest. Captain Vextar stood outside the cargo hold, watching through the thick glass window. His skin had turned a worried shade of purple, and all 4 of his arms were crossed over his chest. This is against every safety protocol we have, he said to Clicketh, who was taking readings with various scanning devices. The creature has grown 6 inches in just 2 days. Click reported, his compound eyes reflecting the light from his scanners. At this rate, it will be fully adult-sized within weeks. Through the window, they could see Sarah sitting next to Onyx, reading from a tablet while the creature rested its massive head near her feet. The amber patches on its sides pulsed slowly and peacefully. "Look at the size of those claws," one of the security officers said, pointing at Onyx's feet. Each claw was as long as Sarah's hand and sharp enough to cut through metal. One swipe from those could tear Dr. Chen in half. Yet it has not, Captain Vextar said thoughtfully. It moves very carefully around her. Inside the cargo hold, Sarah was reading Earth animal behavior studies to Onyx. She had discovered that the creature seemed to enjoy the sound of her voice, especially when she read in a calm, steady rhythm. "On Earth," she said to Onyx, "we have animals called elephants. They are very large and very smart, and they form strong family bonds. People used to think they were dangerous because of their size, but we learned that they are gentle giants who only attack when they are afraid or protecting their babies." Onyx made a soft rumbling sound and shifted closer to Sarah. The movement was slow and careful, as if the creature understood exactly how much space Sarah needed to feel safe. "I wonder if you are like elephants," Sarah continued, reaching out to stroke the smooth scales on Onyx's neck. "Big and strong, but gentle at heart." Outside the window, Klicht was showing Captain Vextar the results of his scans. "The creature's brain activity is unlike anything in our databases," he said. "The patterns suggest high intelligence, possibly even higher than some council species." "That makes it more dangerous, not less," Captain Vexitar replied. "An intelligent predator is the worst kind." "But look at this," Klicht pointed to another reading. "These are stress hormones. The levels have dropped by 90% since Dr. Chen began caring for it. And these readings here suggest the creature is experiencing what we might call contentment." Captain Vextar studied the data. "Contentment? From a Nethrix? It does not match any known behavioral patterns," Klicht admitted. "But the readings do not lie." Inside the cargo hold, Sarah had finished reading and was now playing a simple game with Onyx. She would hide a small object behind her back, then hold out both hands. Onyx would gently touch one of her hands with the tip of its snout, trying to guess which hand held the object. "That is incredible," Captain Vextar whispered. "It is actually playing." "Not just playing," Klicht said, checking his scanners again. "Learning. Its success rate has improved with each game. It is figuring out Dr. Chen's patterns." When Onyx guessed correctly, Sarah would laugh and praise the creature. "Good job. You are so smart." Onyx would respond by making that deep purring sound and gently bumping Sarah's shoulder with its head. "This behavior is not in any of our records," Captain Vextar said. "Nethrix are supposed to be solitary hunters. They do not play games." "Maybe," Klicht said slowly. "Our records are incomplete." That night, Sarah slept in the cargo hold with Onyx. She had made a bed for herself near the creature's head, close enough that she could reach out and touch its neck if it seemed distressed. The rest of the crew watched through security cameras, taking shifts to make sure nothing went wrong. "She is sleeping next to a creature that could kill her without even trying," one security officer said. "And yet she seems completely at peace," Captain Vextar observed. "Look at her breathing. She is deeply asleep." On the screen they could see Sarah curled up in her blankets while Onyx lay protectively around her, like a living wall of scales and muscle. The creature's eyes were open, alert, as if it was standing guard. "It is protecting her," Klicketh said in amazement. "The Nethrix is protecting Dr. Chen while she sleeps." The next morning brought new concerns. Onyx had grown even larger overnight, and the cargo hold was starting to feel small for such a massive creature. Worse, the creature had begun testing the strength of the doors. "It is not trying to escape," Sarah insisted when Captain Vextar confronted her about it. "It is just curious. Onyx is very intelligent. It wants to understand how things work." "Dr. Chen," Captain Vexitar said patiently, "that creature could break through those doors if it wanted to. The only thing keeping it contained is its own choice to stay." "Exactly," Sarah said. "It chooses to stay because it trusts me, and I trust it. But what if something goes wrong?" Klick asked. "What if it gets frightened or angry? What if its instincts take over?" Sarah looked through the window at Onyx, who was carefully arranging some soft materials into what looked like a comfortable nest. "Then I will deal with it," she said simply. "But I do not think that will happen. Onyx is not a monster. It is just a young animal that needed someone to care about it. That afternoon, their worst fears seemed to come true. A malfunction in the cargo hold's locking system caused the doors to open unexpectedly. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship as Onyx stepped out into the corridor. "All crew to secure stations," Captain Vextar announced over the ship's communication system. "We have a containment breach." Sarah was in the laboratory when the alarm started. She ran toward the cargo hold, her heart pounding with fear. Not fear of Onyx, but fear that the crew might hurt it in their panic. She found Onyx in the main corridor, standing perfectly still while security officers pointed energy weapons at it from both ends of the hallway. The creature's head turned when it heard Sarah's footsteps and its amber patches brightened. "Nobody move," Sarah called out. "Nobody do anything." She walked slowly toward Onyx, ignoring the weapons and the shouts of warning from the crew members. "Hey there," she said softly to the creature. "Did you get lost?" Onyx made a happy rumbling sound and lowered its head so Sarah could reach its neck. The crew watched in amazement as she scratched behind the creature's ear frills. "Come on," Sarah said. "Let us go back to your room. I will read you another story." Onyx followed her willingly back to the cargo hold, its massive feet careful not to step on any of the smaller beings around it. After the doors were secured again, Captain Vextar found Sarah sitting with Onyx in the cargo hold. "Dr. Chen," he said, "we need to talk." Sarah was teaching Onyx a new hand signal when the creature suddenly stood up and walked to the far corner of the cargo hold. It began making excited chittering sounds and digging through a pile of storage containers. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, following the massive creature. Onyx pulled something out from behind the containers and carried it carefully in its mouth. When it returned to Sarah, it gently dropped the object at her feet. Sarah stared in amazement. It was a crystal flower from Verdania 7, glowing with soft blue and purple light. The delicate petals seemed to be made of living glass, and tiny sparkles of light danced inside each one. "Where did you get this?" Sarah whispered, picking up the beautiful flower. Onyx sat back on its haunches and made a pleased rumbling sound. Its tail, which Sarah had not noticed had a tuft of fur-like material at the end, wagged slowly back and forth. Outside the cargo hold, Clicketh was watching through the window. His compound eyes went wide and he started making excited clicking sounds. "Captain Vextar," he called. "Captain, you need to see this." Captain Vextar hurried over to the window. "What is happening?" "The Nethrix just gave Dr. Chen a gift," Clicketh said, his voice shaking with excitement. "A crystal flower. Do you understand what this means?" "No," Captain Vextar said honestly. "What does it mean?" Clicketh was already pulling up files on his portable computer. "I need to cross-reference this behavior with Earth animal databases. Dr. Chen shared them with us when she first arrived." He worked quickly, his 6 legs clicking nervously on the floor. Data scrolled across his screen showing videos and descriptions of Earth animals. "Here," he said suddenly. "Look at this, dogs, cats, even some birds. They bring gifts to their owners when they want to show affection." Captain Vextar looked at the screen, then back at the cargo hold where Sarah was holding the glowing flower, while Onyx watched her with bright, happy eyes. "You think the Nethrix is showing affection?" "Not just affection," Clicketh said, his voice getting more excited. "Look at this data about pack bonding, and this information about domestication. Captain, I think we have been completely wrong about Nethrix behavior." "What do you mean?" Clicketh pulled up more files. "Every recorded Nethrix attack. Look at the common factors. The creatures were always alone, always injured or sick, always in areas where they did not belong. So what if they were not attacking? What if they were trying to get help?" Captain Vextar stared at him. "That is impossible, is it?" Clicketh asked. "Think about the attack on mining station Zella 4. The report said the buildings were torn apart, but what if the Nethrix was trying to get inside to find help? What if it did not understand that the buildings were fragile, and the colonists who died? Accidentally hurt when a creature that weighs 3 tons tried to interact with beings a tenth its size," Clicketh said. "Just like how a human child might accidentally kill an insect while trying to pet it." Captain Vextar looked back at the cargo hold. Sarah was now sitting with Onyx's massive head in her lap, stroking the creature's scales while it made contented purring sounds. "You are saying that Nethrix are not predators at all?" "I am saying they might be something much more remarkable," Clicketh replied. "Look at the creature's coloring patterns." He pointed to Onyx, whose patches were now glowing a steady, peaceful blue, instead of the red they had seen when it was trapped. red for distress or pain, amber for caution or uncertainty, blue for contentment and happiness. These are not threat displays, Captain. They are emotional indicators. But all the data, all the reports, written by people who were terrified and did not understand what they were seeing, Click said. No one ever tried to communicate with a Nethrix. No one ever tried to help one. Until Dr. Chen. Inside the cargo hold, Sarah had noticed something else strange about Onyx's behavior. The creature kept looking toward the door and making soft, questioning sounds. "Do you want to go somewhere?" she asked. Onyx stood up and walked to the door, then looked back at Sarah expectantly. "I think it wants to explore the ship," Sarah said to the cameras, knowing the crew was watching. "Can we let it?" "Absolutely not," came Captain Vextar's voice through the speakers. "It is too dangerous." "Captain," Sarah said, "look at Onyx's body language. Does it look dangerous to you?" The creature was sitting by the door like a patient dog, its tail wagging hopefully and its patches glowing a gentle blue. "It looks like it is asking permission," Captain Vexistar admitted. "Because it is," Sarah said. "Onyx understands that this is your ship, not its territory. It is being polite." Outside the cargo hold, Click was pulling up more data. "Captain, I found something else. Look at this." He showed a video of wolves on Earth playing with human children. "Predators do not play," Click said. "They hunt. But social animals play. Pack animals play. Animals that form emotional bonds play." "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that Nethrix are not the monsters we thought they were. I think they are highly intelligent, highly social creatures that have been desperately trying to make contact with other species for decades, but their size and strength made every interaction go wrong." Captain Vextar watched Sarah scratching behind Onyx's ear frills while the creature made happy sounds. "If you are right," he said slowly, "then we have been making a terrible mistake." "There is only one way to find out for sure," Click said. "We need to study this creature's behavior more closely. We need to let Dr. Chen continue her work. And if you are wrong, if it is still a dangerous predator?" Click looked at the screen showing Sarah and Onyx together. The massive creature was now lying on its side while Sarah examined its healing wounds, and it was holding perfectly still despite what must have been some discomfort. "Look at them, Captain. Really look. That creature could hurt Dr. Chen in a dozen different ways without even trying. But instead, it is letting her touch its most vulnerable spots. It trusts her completely." "And she trusts it completely," Captain Vextar observed. "Exactly. And Dr. Chen has something that none of us have." "What is that?" Click smiled, which was an odd expression on his insect-like face. "Experience with domesticated animals. On Earth, humans have been forming bonds with other species for thousands of years. They understand something that we do not, which is that sometimes the most dangerous-looking creatures make the most loyal friends." Inside the cargo hold, Onyx had brought Sarah another gift. This time it was a shiny piece of metal from somewhere on the ship. Sarah laughed and hugged the creature's massive neck. "Thank you," she said. "You are such a good boy." Onyx's patches glowed brighter blue and its tail wagged so hard that it knocked over a storage container. Captain Vextar made a decision. "Open the cargo hold doors, Captain?" the security officer asked. "Are you sure?" "Dr. Chen is right," Captain Vextar said. "If we want to learn the truth about this species, we need to trust her judgment." The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Onyx looked up hopefully, then back at Sarah. "Go ahead," Sarah said, scratching behind its ear frills. "You can explore. Just be careful not to break anything." Onyx stood up slowly and walked to the doorway. It paused there and looked back at Sarah one more time. "I will be right here," she promised. The massive creature stepped out into the corridor, moving with surprising grace for something so large. Its claws clicked softly on the metal floor as it began to explore its new environment. And for the first time in galactic history, a Nethrix walked freely through a space vessel without anyone pointing weapons at it. 6 months later, Sarah stood in front of the Galactic Council Assembly, with Onyx sitting beside her like the world's largest, most exotic service animal. The massive creature had grown to his full adult size, nearly 10 feet tall at the shoulder. But he still followed Sarah everywhere with the devoted loyalty of a pet dog. The assembly hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all staring in amazement at the sight of a human and a Nethrix standing together peacefully. "Honored council members," Sarah began, "I am here today to present our findings about the species known as Nethrix." She activated a holographic display, that showed videos of Onyx playing, learning tricks, and interacting gently with the ship's crew. What you are seeing challenges everything we thought we knew about these creatures, Sarah continued. Nethrix are not predators. They are highly intelligent, deeply social beings who have been trying to make contact with other species for generations. A council member from the insectoid Zephyrian species raised one of his antenna arms. Dr. Chen, how do you explain the attacks? The destroyed colonies? Sarah looked at Onyx, who was sitting perfectly still despite the attention of hundreds of alien beings. His patches glowed a calm blue and his tail was wrapped neatly around his feet. Those were not attacks, Sarah said. They were attempts at communication that went tragically wrong. She brought up another holographic display, this one showing the aftermath of the mining station Zella 4 incident. Look at the damage patterns, she said. The buildings were not torn apart in anger. They were carefully dismantled, piece by piece. The Nethrix was trying to get inside, probably because it heard voices and wanted to make contact. But 37 beings died, another council member said, because a creature weighing several tons tried to interact with beings a fraction of its size, Sarah replied sadly. The Nethrix had no way to know how fragile we are. On their world, all the native species are large and sturdy. They play rough because they can handle it. She showed more data, including brain scans and behavioral analysis. We have spent the past 6 months studying Onyx and learning about his species. Nethrix have intelligence levels comparable to dolphins or great apes from Earth. They form strong emotional bonds. They have complex social structures, and they have been desperately lonely. Captain Vextar, who was also present at the assembly, stood up to speak. I can confirm Dr. Chen's findings, he said. I have lived and worked alongside this Nethrix for months. It has never shown any aggressive behavior. In fact, it has protected crew members from accidents and has learned to assist with ship operations. The Nethrix ambassador from the Rigelian Confederation looked skeptical. This could be an isolated case, one unusually docile individual. That is why we are proposing a full contact and research program, Sarah said. We want to establish communication with wild Nethrix populations and begin the process of true first contact. She gestured to Onyx, who stood up and walked to the center of the assembly floor. Despite his massive size, he moved with careful grace, making sure not to accidentally bump into any of the smaller beings. Onyx has learned to understand basic commands in 12 different languages, Sarah said. He can solve complex puzzles, shows empathy for injured beings, and has even learned to assist with scientific research. To demonstrate, Sarah held up a data pad and said, Onyx, analysis. The massive creature gently took the pad in his mouth and carried it to Clickth, who was sitting in the science section. Onyx carefully placed the pad in front of the insectoid scientist, then returned to Sarah's side. He understands that Clickth is our science officer, Sarah explained. He knows which crew members handle which types of tasks and he can assist accordingly. The assembly hall buzzed with amazed chatter in dozens of languages. But how do we know they want contact? Asked a representative from the Crystalline Collective. How do we know they will not see us as threats? Sarah smiled and scratched behind Onyx's ear frills, because they have been trying to tell us for decades. We just were not listening. She brought up one final holographic display, showing recent footage from Verdania 7. Since word of our success with Onyx spread, 3 more Nethrix have approached our research stations on their homeworld. They bring gifts, flowers, interesting rocks, shiny objects. They sit at the edge of our camps and watch us work. They are not hunting us. They are trying to figure out how to join us. One of the gifts was shown in the hologram, a carefully woven basket made from native plants, left outside a research station by an adult Nethrix. This shows planning, creativity, and a desire to communicate, Sarah said. These are not the behaviors of mindless predators. These are the behaviors of a species that wants to be our friends. The council speaker, an elderly being from the ancient Vorthon race, leaned forward in his seat. Dr. Chen, what exactly are you proposing? I am proposing the first interspecies adoption and integration program, Sarah said. We have learned that humans have a unique gift for forming bonds with other species. On Earth, we have domesticated dozens of different animals, from wolves to birds to even some reptiles. We understand how to bridge the gap between species that seem very different. She looked around the assembly hall, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds. Onyx is not just my research subject. He is my partner, my friend, and yes, my pet. But he is also proof that we can build relationships across species lines that seemed impossible before. And if other species want to form similar bonds, then we teach them, Sarah said simply. We start carefully with volunteers from both sides. We create training programs and safety protocols. We take it slow and we do it right. Onyx made a soft sound and leaned against Sarah's side. She reached up to scratch his neck and his patches glowed brighter blue. The Nethrix have been alone for a long time, Sarah said. They have been misunderstood and feared. But they do not have to be alone anymore. None of us do. She looked at Onyx, who was watching the assembly with bright, intelligent eyes. We have a choice. We can continue to see differences as barriers, or we can see them as opportunities to learn and grow together. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The interspecies adoption program was approved, with Sarah as its first director. 1 year later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of a new research station orbiting Verdania 7. Below them, the first group of volunteer families were meeting their new Nethrix partners. The careful matching process had taken months, but the results were beautiful to watch. A young Rigelian engineer was playing fetch with a juvenile Nethrix in one of the station's larger recreational areas. A family of Zilithians had adopted an older Nethrix who had lost his own pack, and they were teaching him their traditional songs. Even Captain Vexistar had surprised everyone by bonding with a female Nethrix who shared his love of star navigation. It is remarkable, Click said, joining Sarah at the window. His own Nethrix partner, a smaller male who had a gift for organizing things, was helping him sort research samples in the laboratory. It really is, Sarah agreed. Onyx was lying nearby, now wearing a special harness that identified him as an ambassador and service animal. He had become something of a celebrity in the galaxy, the first Nethrix to travel between worlds and meet other species. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not found him that day? Clicketh asked. Sarah thought about it. Someone else would have found another Nethrix eventually. Maybe it would have taken longer, but I think this was always meant to happen. The Nethrix were ready to make friends. They just needed someone to give them a chance. Humans, Clicketh said with amusement. You see a dangerous predator and think potential pet. We see a living being in need of help, Sarah corrected. Everything else comes after that. On the planet below, a group of young Nethrix were playing with alien children under the careful supervision of their adoptive families. Their patches glowed with joy as they learned new games and made new friends. The galaxy was a smaller, friendlier place than it had been a year ago, and it was getting smaller and friendlier every day. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.